Dear friends, thank you so much for your kind responses to the last reflection on Thyatira. Jezebel does tend to raise some level of interest. Can I say that I will not always address your specific issues, but if you contact me, then I'm very happy to have a discussion with you, and if it's profitable, then I will make a separate reflection based on our discussions with each other. I do want to clarify a couple of issues that I couldn't really address last time due to time constraints. I wish to remind us all that we tend to have a jaundiced view of poor old Jezebel from a particular sexual bent. And as I said last time, this is due more to recent innovations in the interpretation and the reimagination of the figure of Jezebel. We tend to see her more as, a sexual manipulator of men. But that is not how the Bible sees her. This is really part of the ongoing marginalization of women, by seeing them through the patriarchal lens in the Bible. We see this in the Gospels, in the woman who anoints the feet of Jesus. She is seen as a sinful woman, and her sin is seen as sexual. Mary Magdalene is likewise portrayed. Yet when Peter or Paul recognize their sinfulness, it is not assumed that their sin is sexual. It's also true that the Greek term porneia is sexual. It's where we get the word pornography from. However, just because it has that connotation does not always mean that it will be the plain interpretation of the word. Osborne, in his excellent commentary on Revelation, has the title of his section for what I'm about to discuss with you today, Tolerance for the Heretic. In Osborne's translation, he uses the term adultery for porneia, where the ESV and the Holman uses sexual immorality. I think he has used that correctly. I think he's used the correct gloss, given that the person at the heart of the failure of the faithful in Thyatira is that they are fatally compromising their belief in the one true God and in his son Jesus, with their engagement with the guilds and their pagan patron gods. Osborne acknowledges all of the sexual allusions tied up with Jezebel and the worship of the Baals and the connections to the Nicolaitans heresy. But the critical point is that the faithful Christians, despite all their good deeds, have started to wander away from the proper belief in the one true God and his son Jesus. The critical point is that Jezebel deceives the servants of God. Interestingly, this is the only place in the whole book of Revelation where the Christians are the ones who are deceived. Usually it is the rest of the time it's the unbelievers. Osborne is very clear that porneia in this context, in the church of Thyatira, is metaphorical. A final clarification is about the punishment meted out to Jezebel and her followers. There are three groups: Jezebel, those committing adultery, and her children. The ones committing adultery are seen as those who are simply being seduced into her teaching, but have not yet truly involved themselves. These are the ones who will be thrown on the sickbed with her. They will experience great tribulation. The third group, her children, are fully involved followers. These will be killed with death. There is a progressive punishment being meted out here to Jezebel and her followers. Sickbed, great tribulation, death. These punishments, however, will only occur if they refuse to repent. The result of Christ's activity against this cult is that all the churches will now know, and they will know that there is no escape. Christ wants us to be fully aware that when he searches a person, everything about us is laid bare. The Greek term nephros, literally kidney, is where in Hebrew thought was the core of emotions and feelings. And the cardia, that is the heart, was the seat of the intellect and the mind. Together, these made up the inner being of a person. As a result, this deep examination by Jesus of the people in the church, judgment, not reward, will be the result, according to what has been discovered in the examination. So that wraps up the complex issues at the heart of the problem of Thyatira. John then records the words of Jesus as an encouragement to the faithful in the church in Thyatira. First of all, they are referred to as the rest of you. That is not Jezebel, not the adulterers, and nor Jezebel's children. The rest of you are those who are characterized in this way. They have not accepted Jezebel's teaching. While they may have tolerated the movement, they have not succumbed to it. Next, they have never known or adhered to the movement. This enables them to know this does not enable them to know the deep things of Satan. What does this mean? Well, there are two options here. It could be a sarcastic comment on Jezebel, who, in claiming to be a prophetess, claiming to know the deep things of God, she is actually exploring the deep things of Satan. The second option is what we looked at earlier. Jezebel may have taught the Christians should know the deep things of Satan so that they can know what they are turning or triumphing over, because these gods have no power over the believer. This is the Nicolaitanian heresy. In this sense, she would acknowledge the pagan festivals of the guilds are evil, but claim they have no power over the believer. This is rubbish. The phrase, no other burden, may have also been respect to Jezebel, and that's what I initially reflected on last week. However, as some have rightly pointed out to me, and I therefore bring it back here, that the no other burden could simply be a reminder to the faithful rest of you that there is no other burden on you that is required to be other than to be faithful to Jesus. Therefore, what they have is the core of the teaching and the doctrine, and that's what they're called to hold on to. The faithful living out in their lives, the faithfulness to the traditional truths, and the rejection of the falsehoods is to be maintained until Jesus comes. This is the call not only on the church in Thyatira, but it is on us as well. What we have here next is a very complex passage containing the clarification of what it means to overcome and a twofold promise to the faithful believers, that is, the rest of you, and it has this formula: hold fast until I get there, overcome, keep my works to the end. Jesus' words must be lived out in deeds. It will not simply do to say that we keep the words of Jesus here. We have to do the words of Jesus. This is because belief necessarily leads to action. There is the great promise of Jesus, which seems a bit strange. There are three promises: power over the nations, destroy, presumably the nations, or at least the enemies of Christ, with a rod of iron, and shatter them like pottery vessels, and then to be given the morning star. These last verses are deep. They're deeply rooted in Psalm 2, which is about the nations rebelling against God, the futility of that rebellion, and how God will overcome through his anointed Messiah. So what does the power over the nations mean? Well, is it the heretical cult? Yeah, I'm not so sure. This is a cosmic battle, remember, which is going on. Yes, it is being played out for the Thyatira church locally, but as we will soon see in the rest of the book, there is a bigger picture at stake here. There are some tantalizing glimpses as to what this might mean. Daniel 7 has the saints ruling over the Messianic kingdom. Matthew 5, in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus taught that they would inherit the earth. And later in Matthew, the 12 would judge the 12 tribes of Israel. There is no doubt in my mind that this is a cosmic picture originating in the local milieu of having ramifications in the cosmic realm. The promise is also an echo of Psalm 2, verse 8, where God will make his son to inherit the nations, and the ends of the earth will be their possession. The shepherding with the rod of iron and the shattering like potter's vessels is virtually word for word Psalm 2, verse 9. Osborne helpfully shows how John, in his revelation, follows more accurately the original meaning of Psalm 2, which celebrates the victory of God's anointed over the kings of the earth, concluding with the warning that they might be destroyed. Again, the ESV and the Holman Bibles I believe, are in error by translating the Greek term poimano as rule or shepherd. That's another gloss. And I think I actually used that last week. However, going and doing a bit more research, it seems that the violence in the shattering of the pottery is simply too strong for rule or shepherd to be the gloss. And in any case, it would detract from the original source of Psalm 2. So I think it's, you will rule with a rod of iron and shatter the pots of clay. Osborne prefers destroy. This is all about, yeah, sorry, that's right. So Osborne prefers destroy. You will destroy the nations, you will shatter them with a rod of iron, and you'll shatter the pots of clay. Those who oppose the saints will be destroyed by the saints who wield the iron scepter. The imagery here is total destruction. In those days, earthenware pots were created. The names of the king's enemies were inscribed on them, and then they would be shattered to symbolize the future victory of the king. So this is really a promise for the remaining ones, that they are going to triumph completely over the nations, over the world, if they continue to hold fast and to overcome. Finally, Christ says, as I received from my Father. There is a chain of authority here, from the Father to the Son to the conquerors. This is in Psalm 2:7, Mark 1:11 at the baptism of Jesus, and John 17:18 when Jesus sends out his disciples. The second eschatological gift given to the ones who remain is the morning star. Now, this is a really complex one. No one really knows what the meaning is. And it's possible that it was being referenced to Numbers 24:17. A star will arise out of Jacob. And it's also possible a reference to Venus, the planet Venus, which is the morning star, and which was seen, at least in the Roman times, as sovereignty and might. If this last example is the case, it's simply Jesus saying he is the final sovereignty and power with his victorious followers. But I think we're really speculating. But it's nice to reflect on, isn't it? And I like the idea of Venus being the morning star. So what is there for us to hold on to? Well, we must be doers of the word, not just hearers of the word. We have to hold fast to the teachings of Jesus and resist the easy path of the world just to be popular. The promise is that when we weld ourselves to Jesus, we will overcome. It will get hairy and it will be difficult, but we will overcome, and we will end up being in charge, not through our efforts, but through the person and work of Jesus, the Son of God. Those who have ears to hear, let them hear what the Spirit is saying to the churches.